is now called to order. We will start with communications from the public. In order to comply with provisions of the Open Meetings Act, the Commission may not deliberate on subjects discussed under this agenda item. However, the Commission may direct such subjects to be placed on a later regular Commission agenda for discussion and/or possible actions. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time? No? Next is our consent agenda. These items are considered routine or ministerial in nature and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a commissioner so requests, in which case the item would be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item A, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting held Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Item B, consider approval with minor staff comments of the City Center final plat, generally located at the 3800 block of FM 528. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Mann, Commissioner Rise. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Okay. Next action items. Item A, consider approving the site plan amendment for Industry Park Friendswood Phase 2 located at 4500 and 4552 FM 2351. Aubrey, staff summary.
Yes, sir. So this was on our last meeting, but it was postponed because we didn't have everybody here. Just an overview of this project again. This is the boat and RV storage out on 2351. The original site plan for this project was approved in June of 2022. It included 17 trees plus the 17 buffer trees for a total of 34 trees. 9 mitigation trees were the minimum required trees at the time. A site plan amendment request was partially approved in June of 2023. Minutes of that meeting were provided in your backup material. The request to waive the buffer trees was not approved at that time because the commission didn't have the authority to waive that requirement at the time. Construction was completed of the project in November of 2023. Since that time, the owner has obtained letters from the adjacent commercial property owners supporting the concept of not installing the buffer trees. The letters were in your backup material. He also contacted multiple council members expressing his concerns about the requirement to install the buffer trees. A proposal was discussed at the council level at the beginning of the year to consider an appeal process from P&Z and other board and committee decisions. That process was not adopted or didn't go through. So we ended up changing our landscape ordinance for buffering requirements for landscaping to give the commission more latitude. More and more of the city's getting built out. We have existing developments. You know, we can't anticipate every single situation. So giving y'all some latitude to consider existing conditions on properties in specific situations. We changed that ordinance, it was approved. So now we have a current proposal from the property owner to install just the 9 mitigation trees that was the minimum required at the time. And that's the proposal that's before you tonight.
Okay. Next, would the applicant like to speak?
Good to see y'all again.
Good to see you.
Stephanie Kennedy with Coastal Bend Engineering, representing the owner. I think we had a little chat about it last time. So we did remove some of the trees. Mainly those buffered trees would be in the way of many of the security cameras that we have out there, as well as create additional maintenance headaches for the shared detention that's back there. And I think one thing we didn't really talk about, because it's not really on the site plan, but in addition to that, the owner, when this was being built, also installed 9 crepe myrtle trees in the median going up. So whenever you're on 2051, you actually see those crepe myrtles almost in front of the buildings as well. And so I know those are not on the plan and they're off the property, but I think the idea is we're trying to make everything beautiful. We're not trying to squirm out of any requirements. We just want to make sure that we're not putting things in there that cause problems, and especially when it comes to maintenance and security.
Thank you. You're welcome to sit back down, or you can stay up for further questions.
Any questions I can answer?
Well, we'll get to that in the comment period. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Can I make a motion to discuss?
Y'all, you don't have to have a motion to discuss, because we changed our rules, remember? So y'all
Oh, so
can
we
have your
just go to-
discussion,
we can do
and
discussion.
then once somebody's ready to make a motion, you can
Okay.
make the motion.
We'll go ahead and start the discussion with Commissioner Rives.
Okay. So I was here when we voted in 2023, so I wrote down my thoughts, so I'm gonna read them. The city requires trees on most, if not all, properties within the borders. It adds green space to most properties, thus enhancing the aesthetics of our community with a unifying characteristic. The property in question is visible from 2351 and is currently one of the least screened developments in our city and is nearly all concrete and structures with very little space left for trees and landscaping. The original site plan was approved with several more trees than what is existing. The developer chose to go ahead with construction and is now back again asking for another amendment to the previously approved site plan in order to dramatically reduce the number of trees. I'm going to suggest we make a compromise. A little background first. You covered most of it already. The original plan had 34 trees, 17 buffer trees, 12 mitigation trees, or 17 depending on how we look at it, and 5 additional trees. Currently on site, there's 9 trees, and they're all magnolias. At the June 22nd P&Z meeting on 2023, they asked for 9 modifications to their site plan. 7 of those passed, with items 2 and 3 failing. One of the items, item number 4, passed, and that was lowering the number of mitigation trees from 12 down to 9. Each version we see of the site plan has fewer and fewer trees on it. So what I propose is the following. We go ahead and remove the 17 buffer trees due to the fencing and drainage requirements. We bring the mitigation trees back to the original 12. I'm not saying we change it back to 12 mitigation trees. I'm just saying the difference in the 9 and the 12, we bring those trees back. If you count the 9 existing trees, we add 3 to the parking lot on the golf course drive. And then we add 3 to the driveway that's on the other side of the complex, near the fencing and gates along that street. It's very wide and has plenty of room to do that. None of these trees that I'm proposing locations for should interfere with security cameras or drainage or fencing. I'm a little hesitant to just say, let's just go down to 9 trees. I do think they ought to add a few because of its high visibility from 2351. But I'm also not saying let's add all the trees back. So I think we can come to a nice compromise, and what I'm saying would be 6 additional trees. That's my take on it.
Okay. Hold on. Commissioner Bounce?
Can you show me where you're talking about the 3 and 3?
Sure. Can you go back to the other site plan? So that original site plan on the left-hand side are the 2 buildings. And they're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 trees on that side. Currently there's 4 trees. So I'm saying put 3 of those trees back. On the other driveway, on the other side, there's 3 trees existing. 1 in the corner at the first building and 2 in the back, way in the back. And then there's 5 trees that are shown on that plan that aren't there. I'm saying put 3 of those 5 back.
You don't think it would interfere with camera systems? Video.
They're up in front of the property.
And they're not in the ditch?
Nope.
No, I don't have any further questions.
Commissioner Anderson? Okay. Commissioner Mann?
Just to start, what were the crepe myrtles that you were talking about? Are they in the street on 2351?
They're in the median.
Okay, so out of there.
Right.
Awesome. Great
Right next
great
to
job
the
with
gas
that.
station.
So as I've gone through it, just to make sure that I've thought through it all, the 17 barrier trees between the two, I went out there, looked at it. The other property already has some. I did think through, like, okay, what if new properties come in and then they want to build, but they have the blockage there. So I think that's a reasonable, especially with the drainage ditch, something I hadn't thought about, but I think you're right as well. I think that's fine. I am a little concerned with setting a precedent of reducing trees, just because, not just because, but by asking, we just keep reducing trees, because then everyone else is going to try to do the same, potentially. And I get the cameras, that's along the front. I think where those trees are that in the original are good to go. But I like the compromise idea. I hadn't really come up with a perfect solution yet, but I like that you offered one. I don't necessarily know that I want to say where to put the trees, right? Like I'll leave that up to you. But I do think that compromise of, hey, let's not worry about barrier, but let's get the trees up there. Driving down to the golf course, it is super bare. Yeah, from 2351 you can kind of see, but we do request and want trees throughout our community. So I do think that that's a good compromise. And I have put thought into it. I'm not just saying, let's go ahead and get more trees. It's reasonable, and I think from both ends as well. Thanks.
Commissioner Conrad?
I do have a question. What kind of trees are you recommending?
Me?
Yeah,
I'm not recommending any kind of trees, whatever
it
our
doesn't matter.
zoning
Okay.
ordinances call for.
I know that the crepe myrtles that were added adds a lot to that area. And I'm with them. I think that, we need to keep more vegetation, more trees in the area. So the compromise sounds good to me.
Commissioner Phillips?
I do like the compromise idea also. I did have a question about the types of trees, and I know we're not specifying what trees specifically, but I will comment that with the concern of the cameras and the trees that have already been planted, southern magnolias are at a mature height of 60 to 80 feet. So depending on the placement of those trees, obviously you would think that that's going, and then they're very broad. They're 30 to 40 feet wide. So, I mean, in my mind, it just kind of raised the question of, okay, well, but what, those were chosen already and planted, and then that's not impacting the camera. So this is part of why we're saying we don't want to have more trees. So for me, I think, requiring, on the compromise, requiring additional trees to be put in, I think is a really good idea. And certainly the types of trees can be selected that are not going to be large, that are going to cause that problem, because there's many trees that will stay smaller, not even just, specific to, what you mentioned, Marcia, was the crepe myrtles. But I also think that there's a lot of other types of trees that can be planted that wouldn't get quite as large and wouldn't impede the cameras and the security.
Okay. Mind stepping back up for a second? Is a compromise something that you all would consider? Or?
I can't speak for the owners. I can only throw some ideas out there. But if I knew exactly which trees y'all were talking about, I could probably pinpoint it a little bit more.
I have a visual.
That would be awesome.
Submit that into evidence.
This is the old one. I was thinking 2, 3, fire stuff there. I think that keeps it pretty far away from your camera angles and stuff.
Well, I can go over this with the owner and make sure that's something they want to do. I would ask, since I'm up here, since they did plant crepe myrtles outside of their, 9 trees outside of their boundary to beautify the area right in front of the building, would there be any credit for any of that? Because we have a lot of trees off-site, but none that are near the area, but we don't get any credit for any of those. So
You would not necessarily receive credit, but I think it's something worth
consider.
taking into account. For me, the the trees between yourself and the frontal properties, not an issue. I don't think those trees would even survive if you did plant them. So I have no concern there, and especially with the neighbors signing off on that also. And honestly, the difference in trees really isn't a concern for me either. Some of the other commissioners it is. So the other part is for me, it's an industrial area. So
It is, but you're also driving back to the golf course back there. It's not just an industrial area, and we give a lot of leniency out there. I think so, and I do love the crepe myrtles, but I also think that, you know, being reasonable with the barrier trees between the two, especially talking to all of them, that's 17 trees that we're saying don't worry about. So I think kind of the compromise was really good as it was.
Well, I think the owner will have to take into account the irrigation system that's out there and how to extend it, as well as, again, underground things that you can't see, like
I would argue
internet.
against that. The extending of the irrigation system is, he started construction under the pretense that we still had trees on the property.
Could you speak into the mic?
Sorry. So when he started construction, it was the old site plan that still had many trees out there.
Oh, I'm not saying the irrigation system is there. I'm just saying adding on to it to get to those other locations that are, yeah.
okay. Aubrey, what would be the options here?
I mean, you can make a motion to approve, you know, with whatever, you know, motion y'all would like to make and vote on that. Or you can postpone till the next agenda, if, you know, if they want to give additional input.
So sorry, just to clarify for my simple brain, so we can vote to approve with the conditions of the compromise, and then vote on that right now and kind of save a step. And if he's good to go with it, then great. If not, then they would bring it back up to us, and then we could discuss it further.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
At that time, you'd have to have a motion to reconsider and then move forward. But
Okay.
yes, it would be the same thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen.
And just to clarify too, Aubrey, at this point, if this came to us today with the trees that it currently has installed, it would pass besides the buffer, right? It would meet all of our current requirements.
With the 9 trees?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the absolute minimum.
But my argument goes back to assuming 9 trees was the correct number, which I don't think it is.
So in the bottom, in the middle of the screen, there's Reserve A is the current phase of the RV and boat storage, and Reserve B is going to be phase 2. So that's where the 9 trees were existing before. That they've removed them all, so they're mitigating all 9 of those trees on this phase. So that's where the 9 came from. In the industrial zoning district, the minimum landscaping requirement there, because it is industrial, the landscaping is more minimal because it's like the plumbing laydown yard on Beamer Road. I mean, those are typically the kinds of developments out there in that area. I mean, this one's a little bit different because it is the office warehouse, you know, a little bit, you know, nicer. And we changed a lot of ordinances when this project went through, and we changed to allow like architects and professionals to have offices in the industrial district, because we kind of like, well, you know, if somebody wants to have an office in maybe it's an industrial type architect and they don't mind, you know, officing in that area. So we made some changes like that. So if this was just a square lot or rectangle lot fronting 2351, they would have to put a landscape buffer across the front of the property 10 feet or 15 feet with a tree every 25 feet. And then, so if they had street frontage, this one doesn't technically. And then if they had the buffer requirement, that would be required. But other than that, we don't require any other trees on industrial property. So that's why it's just the mitigation.
So if they came back with a site plan for Reserve B, we could still impose the 9 trees on that.
Well, they're mitigating those on this property, so when they do phase 2,
So the 9 trees that exist are the mitigation trees.
yes.
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 I guess where I started too was, the original plat, when we started, was 34 trees. So I think when we enter an agreement there, we're like, okay, yeah, that's great. We'll actually bend over backwards to help this and that and do whatever we can within the guidelines. And now we're down from 34 to 9. I think some of those are reasonable. I think that we kind of need to try our best to stick to the original agreement / plat that we started with. I think that's a reasonable thing, that if we did a plat somewhere else, I get where it is, but even out there and someone continued to change the plan, that we would also be like, well, wait, why are we doing that? So I like the idea of us being reasonable and switching it from 34 and getting a smaller number, but then we're still kind of in the spirit of why we wanted the trees and what's around it.
Okay.
Agree.
So do you want to start the
Yeah, well, if you're ready for a motion.
yeah.
Do we have a motion?
I would make the motion to approve with the consideration or comments of the compromise of adding 6 trees. 6 additional trees.
So
Wording sound
the 9 that they're proposing plus 6
Plus-
for a total of 15.
correct?
Second with those conditions.
Okay. Commissioner Mann, second. Okay. So if it's approved, it's approved. Whether he goes or not, that's up to him. But what if it's declined? Then we start back from scratch.
Then we'll need to do another vote.
Another motion.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Can you abstain?
No, you have to vote.
We can get the big bucks for it.
No.
5-2.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, communications. Announcement of the next Planning and Zoning Commission regular meetings for Thursday, July 10th, 2025, and Thursday, July 24th, 2025. Item B, receive the city council updates from our liaison, Trish. Okay. We will continue with communications and comments from our commissioners. Commissioner Bounds.
Thank you to all the staff for all the hard work. I know this one has been kind of hanging out there for a while, so thank you for staying with that. Thank you, Katie. Thank you to the public for being here. We appreciate it. And sorry to run your time over, Travis.
Commissioner Anderson.
I just echo the same comments. Just a great deal of appreciation.
Commissioner Rice.
Thanks for all the effort everybody put into this. I know I've struggled with it for a long time now, trying to wrap my head around the whole history of the trees and everything. So I appreciate you guys listening to me.
Commissioner Phillips.
On here. I just would like to specifically thank Aubrey for her assistance this week. I'm a newer commissioner, and I didn't have all the history, and so it was very helpful in understanding the specific site plan. So I really appreciate that, and all the other staffers. And thank you for the public comments.
Commissioner Conrad.
I echo all of this, but this particular project has been dragging on for a long time. Things get changed over and over, and I don't know what we need to do to minimize that. Is there anything that we need to do? I mean, we go and we check the property and we look at the trees and how it beautifies the area, like the crepe myrtles. I think it added a lot to it. But still, we started with 34 trees, and it was proposed that 9 be planted and installed. And it's a huge difference. So now that we are talking about having a total of 15, I mean, that, it seems to me that that is pretty much what we need to do.
We can
Unless-
we can maybe put in a giant agenda item on a future agenda to discuss.
Mhm. Mhm.
Cease our discussion.
Right, right.
Commissioner Mann?
I appreciate staff as always. Awesome job. And everybody up here as well. I know that people went out, they drove out there, they looked at it. That's something that we've been really wanting from P&Z specifically, because to really understand it, you got to go look at it and, as I say, pick up the dirt, you know. But I really appreciate everybody's work on that. It is important. And I appreciate taking the time and energy to think about it from everybody's perspective to come up with the best solution for Friendswood. Just happy to be here.
Okay, Aubrey?
Yes, just a reminder, I sent out an email, I think maybe a month or two ago, about the American Planning Association Conference. It's October, we'll be here before we know it. It's October 22nd, I think the 23rd and 24th is the Thursday, Friday. They usually have a commissioner's track. So it's good information, collaboration and input and ideas from other cities in Texas. This year's conference is in Bryan College Station. So if you're interested in going, mark your calendars, let me know as soon as possible so we can start working on hotel reservations and all that.
Okay. Karen? Becky? Okay. And with that, thank you everyone for attending this evening, and the June 26, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting is now adjourned